The explosion of laughter was a physical force, a wave of sound that hit Maya Flores like a slap. She stood frozen in the service entrance of the Apex Hotel's grand ballroom, her cleaning cart a heavy, humiliating anchor. 200 of the city's elite, swathed in silk and smugness, had all turned at once, their eyes finding her, the punchline. "I'm perfectly serious." Julian Thorne's voice cut through the din, rich with champagne and cruelty. The luxury real estate mogul, a man whose face was as ubiquitous on skyscrapers as it was on society blogs, gestured with a flourish toward the centerpiece of the Metropolitan Fashion Gala. The scarlet aura gown. "If you can get into that, my dear, I'll marry you on the spot." The dress was a splash of frozen fire under the spotlights, an exclusive Lauren Beaumont creation with a wasp waist and a price tag that could have paid off her father's medical debt 3 times over. It was a sculpture made for a body honed by personal trainers and privilege, not for a 29-year-old cleaner in a uniform 2 sizes too big, a drab gray sack that hid every curve she'd ever been taught to be ashamed of. Tears, hot and sharp, pricked at Maya's eyes. She blinked furiously, her grip on the cart's handle so tight the metal grooves bit into her palm. Asterisk not here, not in front of them. Asterisk for 6 years, working these glittering events, she'd learned one immutable truth. For the rich, humiliation was a sport, and she was the ball. "Oh, come on now," trilled a woman in a silver gown, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Don't be shy. A marriage proposal from a billionaire doesn't come along every day, does it?" More laughter. Cell phones were out, their tiny flashes capturing her agony for Instagram stories. Hashtag Met Gala, hashtag Cinderella story, hashtag funny. The hashtags were already writing themselves in her mind. She couldn't breathe. The air was thick with perfume and mockery. With a surge of will, she lowered her head and pushed the cart forward, its wheels squeaking a pathetic retreat. Each step was an eternity, each chuckle from the crowd a needle in her back. "Wait!" Julian's voice chased her, still amused. "Don't run away. The offer stands. 30 days. If in 30 days you can fit into that dress, I am a man of my word." The crowd cheered as if he'd just announced a donation to charity. Maya didn't look back. She shoved through the heavy service door, and as it swung shut, muffling the cacophony of the ballroom, she collapsed against the cold, concrete wall of the hallway. The scent of bleach and folded linens filled her nostrils. Finally, the tears came, silent, shuddering sobs of utter degradation. But then something shifted. In the sterile silence, between the stacks of towels and the rattle of a distant service elevator, the hot shame in her veins began to boil. It simmered, then raged, transforming into something new, something solid and sharp. Anger. What none of those laughing guests knew was that Maya Flores wasn't just a cleaner. 6 years ago, she'd been Maya Flores, star design student at the Fashion Institute, on a full scholarship, her future a bright, open runway. Then her father, a construction worker, had taken a bad fall. A shattered spine, catastrophic bills, a life confined to a wheelchair. She dropped out 2 semesters from graduation, swallowed her dreams, and taken on 3 jobs to keep them afloat, to pay for his physical therapy, his medications, their cramped apartment in the Bronx. For 6 years, she had endured. But this was different. This was a line drawn in the sand. She wiped her face with the rough sleeve of her uniform, the fabric scratching her skin. She straightened her shoulders, lifting a chin that had been bowed for too long. 30 days. It wasn't about the wedding. The thought was laughable. It was about the challenge. It was about the principle. It was about proving to Julian Thorne and to every person in that room that her worth was not measured by her job or her dress size. And what Julian Thorne, in his towering arrogance, had no way of knowing was that his little joke had just lit a fuse. Maya wasn't just going to try on a dress. She was going to dismantle his entire world. Maya didn't sleep that night. Sitting at the small formica table in her kitchen, the glow of her old laptop the only light, she typed 3 words into the search bar: Julian Thorne scandals. The screen flooded with articles about his newest hotel openings, photos of him on yachts in Monaco, glowing profiles of his philanthropy. But Maya, a digital ghost from her years of invisibility, knew how to look deeper. She found obscure forums for disgruntled former employees, whispered complaints about labor practices, rumors of non-disclosure agreements, and hush settlements with women who had worked for him. Interesting, she murmured to the silent apartment, her fingers flying as she bookmarked links, copied text, and started a digital dossier. At 5 a.m., she was standing outside a place called The Pit, a 24-hour gym 3 blocks away. It was a dungeon of sweat and iron, with cracked mirrors and the grunt of effort echoing off concrete walls. The owner, a woman named Rita with a coiled braid and eyes that missed nothing, looked up from wiping down a bench. First time, Rita asked, her voice a low rasp. "I have 30 days to fit into a size 2 dress," Maya said, her voice steadier than she felt. Rita's eyebrow arched. "And why would you want to do a damn fool thing like that?" "Because someone bet I couldn't." Maya held her gaze. "Someone who thinks I'm a joke." A slow, fierce smile spread across Rita's face. "All right then, we're going to make that son of a bitch eat his words. But you listen to me, and you listen good. This," she said, gesturing to the gym, "will be the easy part. The hard part is what's up here." She tapped her own temple. "You show up. Every day. No excuses." Maya nodded. What she didn't say was that the dress was just the doorway. Her real goal was waiting on the other side. Over the next week, Maya built a new, brutal reality. Gym at 5 a.m. with Rita, who pushed her until her muscles screamed and her lungs burned. Work from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., scrubbing the very halls where she'd been humiliated. Then back to the gym. Then home to make dinner, help her father with his exercises, and tuck him in a bed. And then, when the apartment was quiet, she returned to her laptop, her digital hunt. That's how she found Chloe. Chloe Anderson, Julian's former executive assistant, had filed a lawsuit against Thorne Enterprises 3 years prior for sexual harassment and wrongful termination. The case had been settled quietly, with a hefty payment and a strict NDA. But Chloe had an anonymous blog, a beautifully written, heartbreaking chronicle of a young woman's spirit being systematically broken by a powerful man. The details were vague, but Maya knew. She sent a carefully worded email from an encrypted account. 2 hours later, her phone, a cheap prepaid thing, buzzed. "You're her," a woman's voice said. No greeting, no preamble. The woman from the Apex Hotel video. "I saw it." Maya's stomach plunged. "It's online. It's viral. 2 million views." "But don't worry," Chloe said, her tone softening slightly. "Most of the comments are on your side. People are calling him a monster. Why are you contacting me?" "Because I read your blog, and I have a feeling you're not the only one." There was a long silence on the other end, filled only by the sound of measured breathing. "Meet me tomorrow. The Daily Grind Cafe in Queens. I need to look you in the eye before I tell you what I know." The next day, Maya sat across from a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and a posture that spoke of a lifetime of holding herself together. Chloe, at 34, had a stillness about her that felt dangerous. "Julian Thorne is a predator," she said bluntly, stirring her coffee. "But he's a meticulous one. He covers his tracks. He documents everything about everyone, their weaknesses, their secrets, and uses it as insurance. He has files." "Where?" Maya leaned forward, her heart hammering. "I don't know, but I know who might." Chloe slid a napkin across the table. A name was written on it, Ben, his driver for 10 years. Julian fired him last month for breach of trust. The truth is, Ben saw something he shouldn't have. Julian with a junior architect who wasn't his wife. Meanwhile, Julian Thorne's life began to develop hairline fractures. His PR team couldn't kill the video. "It's a hydra, Mr. Thorne," a flustered consultant told him over the phone. "We take it down from one platform, it pops up on 3 others. There's a petition demanding a public apology. It has over 75,000 signatures." Julian hung up, seething. This nobody. This cleaner. She was a stain on his impeccable brand. He stared out his penthouse window at the city he felt he owned, a cold knot of unease in his gut. For the first time in decades, his money couldn't buy back the narrative. While he fretted over his image, Maya found Ben. The former driver, a man in his 50s with the weary eyes of someone who had seen too much, agreed to meet in a dusty park. He destroyed my son, Ben said, his voice gravelly with grief and rage. My boy, Leo, worked in the mailroom. Hoped to be an architect. Julian's wife made a pass at him at the company Christmas party. Leo, a good kid, politely turned her down. The next week, Julian fired him for stealing office supplies. Spread lies. The kid hasn't been able to get a job since. He's not the same. Maya placed a hand on his arm. Ben, if I'm going to do this, I need to know where he keeps his secrets. Ben looked at her, his eyes searching hers for a long moment. Then he nodded, a decision made. He's paranoid. He keeps a digital safe, but his lawyer, a snake named Arthur Finch, keeps a physical backup, a fireproof lockbox in his apartment. Finch is going to his Hamptons house this weekend, and I know where he hides the key. The plan was set. It was reckless, but it was all they had. 28 days after the humiliation, Maya was unrecognizable. She had lost 18 pounds. Yes, but more than that, her body was harder, her gaze direct and unflinching. Rita watched her complete a set of deadlifts, the muscles in her back and arms standing out in sharp relief. You did it, kid, Rita said, a note of pride in her voice. You're ready. But this was never about the dress, was it? Maya just smiled, a sharp, cold thing. That night, she had two missions. One was for the world to see. The other was for Julian to feel. The final piece fell in a place a week before the deadline. Maya was cleaning the executive boardroom after a late meeting. On the polished mahogany table, left behind in a hurry, was a sleek, silver tablet. Julian Thorne's personal tablet. Her breath hitched. He'll be back for it. She had minutes, maybe less. Her hands didn't shake. Years of moving unseen made her swift and silent. She woke the screen. It was unlocked. Arrogant, she thought. She opened the email client. There it was. A treasure trove of arrogance. Bribes to city inspectors to overlook safety violations. Internal memos discussing how to suppress unionization efforts in his hotels. And, most damningly, a string of explicit, coercive messages to a woman named Isabel from the planning department. She didn't have time to read it all. She took photos with her own phone, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. Asterisk click, click, click. Asterisk evidence of environmental fraud. Click, insider trading tips. Asterisk click, click, asterisk. She heard a voice in the hall. She closed the case, placed the tablet back exactly as she found it, and slipped out the service entrance just as Julian Thorne strode back into the room, his mind already on his next conquest. He had no idea he had just lost the war. The night of the Apex Hotel's charity auction arrived. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and unspoken deals. Limousines disgorged the powerful and the beautiful, their jewels glittering under the paparazzi's flashbulbs. Julian Thorne held court at the center of it all, the magnanimous king of his castle, the viral video a distant, irritating memory. He didn't see Maya enter. She moved through the crowd with a new, quiet authority, wearing a simple black sheath she had designed and sewn herself. The scarlet aura gown glowed on its pedestal, a silent witness. It was only when she was a few feet away, her presence creating a pocket of silence, that he noticed her. He blinked, his smile faltering. There was something in her face, in the set of her shoulders, that his brain struggled to compute. Do you remember me? Maya asked, her voice calm and clear, cutting through his conversation with a group of Japanese investors. Julian's eyes narrowed, then widened in dawning, horrified recognition. The color drained from his face. You, 30 days, she said, gesturing gracefully toward the dress. You said if I could fit into that dress, you'd marry me. The offer still stand. A nervous titter ran through the immediate circle. People were turning, sensing a scene. Phones were subtly raised. Julian forced a laugh, a brittle, hollow sound. Now look, that was a moment of levity. A joke. Surely you understood that. A joke, Maya repeated, pulling out her phone. Funny, it didn't feel like a joke to the 2 million people who watched the video. Would you like to make it 3 million? A murmur rippled through the ballroom. It's her, someone whispered loudly. The cleaning lady from the video. Julian's composure cracked. He stepped closer, his voice a venomous hiss meant only for her. What do you want? Money? Is that it? Justice, Maya said, her voice ringing out now, projecting across the growing quiet. She nodded. From the crowd, 4 women emerged, forming a silent, formidable semicircle around him. Chloe, her gaze steady. A young Korean woman Maya knew as Sarah, a former intern. An older black woman named Lena from accounting. And a timid, elegant woman in a hijab. Isabel, the woman from the emails. I want you to look at them, Maya commanded. Acknowledge what you did. Julian's face was a mask of panic and contempt. I have no idea who these people are. This is a circus. Chloe Anderson. Harassment lawsuit. Settled 2020. Sadacho. Unwanted advances and professional sabotage. 2021. Lena Jones. Fired after reporting the wage disparities in your hotels. Maya paused, letting the names hang in the air. And Isabel, your own junior architect. The one you promised a promotion to in exchange for what was it? She glanced at her phone. Discreet dinners and weekends away. Gasps echoed through the opulent room. Isabel flinched but held her ground, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. You're insane. Julian spat, his voice trembling. These are lies. Slander. Then explain these, Maya said, turning to the large screen at the front of the room, which was supposed to be displaying lot numbers for the auction. With a tap on her phone, the screen lit up. A collective gasp sucked the air from the room. There, enlarged for all to see, were the photos from his tablet. An email detailing the bribe to a city inspector. A spreadsheet of suppressed wage data. And most damningly, the string of explicit, manipulative messages to Isabel. Asterisk, if you want the lead on the new tower, you'll meet me at the suite. 8 p.m., don't disappoint me. Asterisk. The sound system, which Maya had pre-synced, began to play an audio recording. Ben's doing a hidden device in the car. Asterisk Julian's voice, cold and clear. If she doesn't sign the NDA, leak the photos to her fiancé. I don't care how you do it. Ruin her. Asterisk. The silence that followed was absolute, then shattered by the frantic clicking of cameras and the outraged shouts of journalists. Ow. How did you? Julian stammered, his world collapsing in real time. You underestimated the cleaning lady, Maya said, stepping so close he could see the cold fire in her eyes. But here's the interesting part, Julian. I did fit into the dress. I tried on yesterday. A perfect size, too. So technically, you owe me a wedding. A wave of nervous laughter swept the room. But Maya wasn't laughing. But I don't want to marry you. I want you to pay. Not just to me, but to every person you've ever stepped on. She turned to address the stunned crowd. How many people here have been bullied, belittled, or silenced by a man like him? A man who thinks his wealth is a license to treat people like trash. A few people clapped, then a few more. A woman in a green gown stood up, shouting, "You tell him." Then a man. The applause grew, thunderous, cathartic. It was a dam-breaking. Before Julian could form a sentence, 2 uniformed police officers, alerted by a tip from Ben and the evidence Maya had sent to the DA, approached. Julian Thorne, one said, his voice official and loud. We have a warrant for your arrest. You're under investigation for bribery of a public official, insider trading, and witness intimidation. As they clicked the handcuffs around his wrists, Julian looked at Maya one last time. The hatred was gone, replaced by a hollow, devastating realization. She hadn't destroyed him. She had simply held up a mirror, and he had finally seen the monster he'd become. 3 months later, the story was still making headlines. Julian Thorne pleaded guilty to a slew of charges in a deal that spared him a longer trial, sentenced to 3 years in a white-collar prison. His company was dismantled, sold off to pay massive fines and settlements. A $50 million fund was established for victims of harassment within his enterprises. Maya watched the news on the small TV in her apartment, which now featured a brand-new, professional sewing table, a gift from a fabric company inspired by her story. Her father, his mobility improved thanks to the intensive physical therapy funded by online donations, smiled at her from his chair. "They're talking about my girl again," he said, his voice thick with pride. Maya just smiled and turned back to the sky blue silk on her table. She felt no vengeance, only a profound, quiet peace. The Parsons School of Design had offered her a full scholarship to finish her degree. She'd accepted. On her graduation day, she stood at the podium, wearing a red dress of her own design, softer, more fluid, more her. A few months ago, she told a rapt audience, her mother and Rita beaming from the front row, someone told me I would never fit into a dress. What I've learned is that the problem was never the dress. The problem was thinking I had to change to fit into spaces that were never built for me. The applause was deafening, but she waited for it to calm. I didn't come here for a story of revenge, but for one of rebuilding. The best answer to someone who tries to humiliate you is to build a life so true and so strong that their opinion becomes nothing but background noise. After the ceremony, a young girl, no more than 19, approached her, her eyes wide. "Miss Flores? I saw the video. My boss used to say I'd never be anything. But seeing you, it changed everything for me. I'm in college now, first in my family." Maya hugged the girl tightly, feeling the warm tears on her shoulder. And in that moment, she understood completely. The real victory wasn't the prison sentence or the corporate downfall. It was this. It was becoming a beacon, living proof that no one could define your worth unless you handed them the pen. Walking home that evening, diploma in hand, she passed the gym, the cafe, and finally the towering, glittering Apex Hotel. She paused, looking up at its imposing facade for a long, quiet moment. Then she smiled a small, private thing and kept walking. Some places were only meant to teach you who you never wanted to be again. And once you learned the lesson, you never, ever had to go back. My sweet loves, subscribe to Soul Script Stories, like, and share. Your support keeps the stories alive, and the next chapter will be even juicier.